What is going on, everybody? We are live. I am gonna paint the brand new Necro paint pot holder coming soon as an add-on in the newest Ghost Brush Kickstarter. A brand new set of paint brushes, all very small, very fine detail brushes. It's a perfect little set for finishing touches on models, and I'll show you those in a bit. But let's put down some base coats on this. This is a 3D printed resin sculpture here. And just a quick thing, it holds both the wash size and the contrast size Citadel paints. You just put it in and you can see you probably won't spill your paints. And without it, you will, potentially, right? So not obviously the most 100% needed thing on the paint table, but it is going to look awesome on your paint table. It's going to be a really cool product to have. You're going to get to display it because once you paint it up for your models, it's going to look great. And I think people are really, really going to like it. I have this one here primed. And I think we're going to use some contrast paint. And I think we're going to start this off with Agarose Dunes. Then I'm going to wipe away the excess with a sponge because this is mostly bones, but there is some dirt I could see in the sculpture. But you could actually treat it as if it was all bone. It would look great. And then I think I might re-hit the bone with Skeleton Horde. And hopefully that'll give us a good place to start. And it should be a good time. So get yourself a drink. I'm going to crack open this club soda thing here. And we'll get started. If you have anything in the chat, please let me know. Obviously, when I'm doing these, part of the fun is chatting with all you guys. So if you got any questions or whatnot, please feel free. All right, so let's get started with Agarose Dune Contrast Paint. If I had two of these right now, I could demonstrate. Basically, you would just put this pot in there, and then while you're, say, painting your miniature, you don't have to worry about knocking it over as much. So this is the size 6 Ghost Brush. We'll just jump right up. We'll do this a little quicker. All I did off screen here, I dampened the size 1 Ghost dry brush, and we're going to use this as a big mop style brush or wash brush. So let me get a little pool of water. And we're just going to load this up. And we'll also mix a little bit of water in, keep our brush a little damp. And we're just going to go ahead and quickly, basically, give this an all-over wash of Agarose Dune Contrast Paint from Games Workshop. If you had like a big cheap soft brush, if you don't already have like a Ghost dry brush, any kind of big soft cheap brush would work really nice for applying like this much of a wash or contrast paint to this much texture. Like you can see, I mean, there's a lot of texture in here. So you don't want to be scrubbing at it with like a round style brush or you'll be damaging the tip. So also there might be problems with me as I hold this. Maybe I should have glued it to a some kind of stand or miniature holder, medicine bottle. That would have likely been a good idea, but we didn't. So we'll just move on because I already started the stream. Can't go back now. And we're just applying it all over, kind of light brown, bone type color. This one is a little darker than Skeleton Horde. So I figure it'll be a good place to start. Try to really get those shadows in. And just give us an all-around dark base coat. One thing, using like a ghost dry brush for this kind of task, because the brush is pretty durable, and this is kind of hard on a normal brush, you know, it's not a bad use for it. Obviously, we'll do some dry brushing later because it's so much texture and so much bone, and dry brushing often has a dry finish, which looks nice on dry surfaces like bone generally. So I could see some dry brushing in the future. And I think that does it. Just obviously I'm going to be wiping some away with my fingers on accident as I hold it, but I think that's going to be okay. And just while it's still wet, let me rinse off my paintbrush. Please let me know in the chat if you have any questions about the upcoming campaign, or you want to talk about gaming or painting, paintbrushes. You want to talk about, I don't know, pop culture stuff. I don't really know. I'm not that up to date on it, but I have been reading the 40K comic book, so I got that. Now I'm just going to take this makeup sponge and just use it to somewhat wipe away some of this. See, it's coming off there. And just kind of wipe away these major kind of skulls, maybe some of this bone if we can. Don't really need to worry about the inside. I'll actually make that even darker. Normally, although this isn't a bad idea, I actually seen what's his name, James Wapple, do this on his stream and stuff. I wouldn't normally actually do this step. It's cool. It gives you a cool effect and whatnot. And for what I'm doing, it's not a bad idea. But actually what I would probably do is just let this dry. But since we're on stream, we don't really want to just sit here and let all this wash dry, and I put a lot on. So we're just going to try and wipe away a lot of the extra. And hopefully that'll give us a kind of drier surface to work on sooner. So now that there's less paint we got to let dry, then, well, should be dry faster. I'm going to go ahead and take Cygor Brown. Another contrast here. Maybe get my brush a little damp. And we'll just darken in this center. And you know what? I don't hate that. So let's try to apply this roughly to where maybe some of the dirt. Oh, got it on the skull. Here's a fun, right? You get it on the skull. If you don't want it, you can just wipe it off. That's fine. I can't wait to see how everybody paints these up after the campaign and you guys get yours. They're going to look so good. Like, just seeing them on the table when people are doing their paint videos or streams, I think they're going to look just awesome. And, you know, it's always fun to have some cool looking stuff on your YouTube videos. Obviously, if you're better at making YouTube videos than I am, you already know that. But people like looking at extra cool stuff. So, and this is just going to look great on your paint table. So, right? I mean, that's just going to be over there. Well, it's wet, but, you know, and then you'll have your paint pot in there. It's going to look good. All right. So let's rinse off this brush. Now, normally if you're dry brushing, you don't really want to rinse your dry brush till near the end, unless you're letting a lot of paint dry on there. Obviously, you want it to try to remain fairly dry, so you can get your dry brush achieved. So we got that dark. I'm just going to dab it up a little bit. You know, we probably didn't need to dab it that much, but there was just kind of a lot pooling in there, so we'll go ahead. And you see it takes off quite a bit, right? We've gotten a lot of paint absorbed off of this thing. And this is pretty dry to the touch already, even with the contrast paint. See, it's not rubbing off anymore. So that's cool. Great, great little thing. Now I'm going to take, you know, I think I'll go back real quick. Sigor Brown. I'm going to dampen my brush here. This is just water in a bottle cap. And this is a Ghost 6. I've been using this one for a very, very long time. You can see I got paint all in the ferrule, paint all in the handle, right? It's had a lot of use, so it gets beat up over time, no big deal. And we're just going to use this to kind of spot in some of the darker areas. Basically, we're painting in maybe the shadows of some of these bones, especially these skulls, trying to frame the skulls a little bit. I think I'll darken in their eyes with this more proper size brush. Put the darker holes in the eyes. Also, anywhere maybe we missed with the larger brush, you know, put a little bit of your darker brown on those areas. That way, we want this to be brown and dirty and a pile of bones. But we don't want any unpainted little, you know, white prime resin showing through. And sometimes, you know, with the larger brushes, you can miss some little spots. Plus, like I said, this is just loaded with texture. So much texture on this one that, first of all, with all that texture, it's going to be perfect for dry brush techniques and washes. I mean, it's just going to pop. But, you know, sometimes you can miss a spot. So just go in, double check. Already we got our browns building up. I think looking relatively cool. All right, let's give that a second to dry. Let me show you the brand new Ghost Tiny. So you're familiar, if you're on the channel, with the Ghost brushes, the Ghost dry brushes, and now upcoming campaign in just a week or two. I'm still trying to lock in the exact launch date. We have Ghost Tiny. So let me show you these. First look, I haven't shown them online yet. So if you're watching the stream, oh, sorry for the suspense. I got, where is it? Contrast. I can see now from another angle. I got a spot in here I got to get. Sorry, that wasn't planned. I am going to show you here. I just didn't pay attention to where I missed a few spots. Too much chatter, huh, guys? Of course, this is always more fun if people want to jump in the chat. That's why I'm doing it on stream instead of a video, so we could chit chat about it. Okay, let me show you. We'll let this dry for a second. All right, so you've seen, let me just grab a handful here. So yeah, you've seen all the ghost brushes, you've seen ghost dry brushes. You love them, I love them. We've been having a great time painting with them. I use them basically exclusively now. Almost, I say 99% of the time, I'm always using those brushes. Of course, I'm supporting my own product, but they really work. They just work great. So let me show you Ghost Tiny. First look, thumbs up. First look. Give me a thumbs up. First look. So first off, this is going to be the dry brush size 0. So this will be the Ghost Dry Brush 0D. So if you look, obviously this one's been used and wet, but this is much, much smaller. So when people got these dry brushes, I thought most people would like to be using them in the early stages of painting, the big bases, basing, rough highlighting, but a lot of people wanted a smaller one. So this will be a stretch goal of $50,000 of the campaign, which is only a third of what we actually did last time. So should be easily achieved. Everybody will get one of these or more. We might, I might make it so everybody gets 2, right? If we get enough support. And here we go. Let's check out. This is a brand new set, Ghost Tiny. Ghost Tiny. Check it out. Make sure you follow me on Kickstarter so you don't miss these. And if you do miss them, the campaign will be going through February and maybe early March it will end. And you could still get them on eBay after I ship them all, but it takes a while to get all these shipped out. We had over 3,000 people last time. So definitely follow the Kickstarter and my page on Kickstarter, Sleepwalk Airbrush, Sleepwalk Air, and don't miss out on these. So let's take a look real quick. This one here is a very small chisel brush. So it's a flat brush, hard to see because they're so small, but it is got an angle cut on the flat end. So it's called a chisel brush. All of these basically are going to be like your 00, 000 style, but it's a set of, think of it as a set of different 000s for, whatever your needs are for the miniature. So here's the chisel brush. If you got a little flat surface that maybe you need to put a little slice in or a highlight, great brush. Next one, I want to show you another special one. This is just the flat. So this one, let me get it. So yeah, there you go. This is a flat. So no slice in the end at an angle. It's just flat on the top. So this is your normal flat, but a very, very small size. So also good for flat surfaces, little belts, little straps on models. This one's almost going to be perfect size if you need to just cut in a leather strap or something. It's almost going to be the exact width of most 28 mil straps and belts. And then here you got 7 different rounds, all round, varying in size. So you got the smallest one here. These would be probably considered somewhere in like 000 to 50. Maybe these ones over here could be like a size 1, maybe, but I don't know. There's so little hair. They're so thin. You could almost compare them to like a liner brush, and you're going to get a whole variety of rounds here, which obviously for what we do are going to be amazing. So I think you're really going to like these, and hopefully you're enjoying the first look here while we let the little skull pile dry. And then also these have the thicker handles. So let me just show you that real quick. Here is the new Ghost Tiny. And here is my old beat up size 6 Ghost Brush. So you can see there's quite a bit less hair. It's real thin, sharp point. And then the handles got a thick handle here. So you can see there, the big handle on top is actually the Ghost Tiny new brush. And that big handle is sometimes nice. It's comfy to hold. Plus, when you're really getting in there and really trying to hit those little tiny details, sometimes it's nicer to hold on to something a little bigger. The same theory could be applied to why you would use a paint handle when you paint a miniature. Sometimes it's nicer to hold on to a paint handle. It's more comfortable in your hand. So yeah, look at that. Nice new bigger size handle for this set. It's going to be super popular. And there you go. Let's see if we can't get some of this painted here. So we're not really dry, but I think we can move on. So let's just go straight into, well, we got Jackbone here, but I feel like, yeah, let's just do that. Let's go Jackbone. P3 Jackbone. Any bone color will work just fine. This is just one of those paints that I have. I'm not going to buy it again just because they don't sell P3 at the store that I shop at and hang out at anymore. And it's good paint, but, you know, I got plenty of bone colors. Here's the size 2 Ghost dry brush. Let me show you the comparison real quick if I can reach it. Just for the viewers. So look at that. Size 2 Ghost dry brush, the 0 Ghost dry brush, brand new here, coming out soon. So yeah, you'll really be able to hit all those little fine details with that one. And this one's going to be great for basing big areas like this. It's got a lot of hair. You can really take a beating. I've been using this one. Actually, this one's not even labeled. So this is over a year old now because it's an original sample before the main order. And you can see it's taking quite a beating. It's still going strong. Let's see if we can't get this in frame a little bit. So yeah, and sometimes just a piece of cardboard here, nothing cut from a shipping box, nothing crazy. And we'll just rough in a sort of over dry brush highlight. We're going to be mixing a little bit with some of that damp contrast paint, but we're not going to let it slow us down. We're trying to make this look pretty cool for a stream. Normally, if this was like a normal miniature, you know, you could let one area dry and go work on the next, but since it's all one kind of element of dirt and bone and graveyard, you just kind of work on it all at once. So and I think for the average person, you know, maybe they might even be just happy with this. Prime it brown, dry brush it, a couple bone colors, you know, this like a darker bone and then a lighter bone or an off-white, and you could call it a day. I think people would be pretty happy with that. But we'll try to push it a little farther. I don't have any particular theme in mind or anything. We're just going to work on it, and hopefully people watching are getting an idea of the cool new paint holder that's coming up in the new campaign. So there you go. You got kind of this roughed in bone colors here. There's a lot of dirt here, so that's kind of a nice dark spot. Keep dark. And I think we can, I'm not going to wash my paintbrush yet because I want to keep it dry. Now, I think, I'm just going to jump a huge step here. I'm going to jump right up to Rotten White from Vallejo Game Effects, Rotten White. This is kind of a thick white paint. I don't know what the effect is supposed to be, but I have it, so we're going to try it. And this will mix naturally in with a little bit of the Jackbone color left in our brush, but it's going to be quite a jump in value. But we can always cut it back with some washes if we feel like it's too white. I think it's going to look good. I think you could go really gory with this and, you know, put a bunch of like kind of blood effects on it. Maybe we'll do a little, I don't know if we'll do like a blood effect, but I think it would look pretty cool. Or like a swamp effect. You could hit it with your kind of neon green water effect type paints at the end. Make it look like these are skulls in the swamp. You could use colors like greens and things to maybe represent like moss growing on the bone. So that could be cool. Kind of ignoring the inside here because the inside is where the paint pot goes. So I don't think it's very important to paint that. And then now also when I'm on stream, I'll have this cool looking paint pot holder in the shot, which I think the viewers will like, you know. And I think a lot of the backers are going to like having it on their desk. There we go. That's looking cool. Now we got this white out already. Now we'll just take the rest of it. Rotten white from Vallejo Game Effects. Naturally, there's less Jack Brown still in my brush. It's less wet, so this white is not mixing as much, and it's going to be a highlight. Even though it's the same color, it's just less of the Jack Brown or Jackbone mixed in. And if you're really creative, you could do you could really knock out like some different color bones. You don't have to treat all the bones the same, you know, like I'm doing here, but we'll see if we can't maybe pick out something cool. Yeah, I really love this detail here with this rib cage. You can see that. So you got this kind of rib cage here that's split open and goes on to the other side here. Just right there. It's so cool. That could be an area where you maybe did some blood effect or something. All right, there we go. Nice bone color. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rinse the brush now because I think we don't need to necessarily be dry brushing a ton anytime soon. Plus, I have more dry brushes, so even if this was still damp and I needed a dry one, I would be able, you know, to just grab a dry one. But we'll let that sit. So let's check over at the chat, see what's going on. Make sure if you're watching this in the future, hit the thumbs up. And let's take another bottle cap here. I'm going to go with dark rust. Oh, kind of missed on that last drop. A little bit dark rust. And AK Ultra Matte Varnish. Mix that in there. Maybe a drop or two of distilled water. You can see these here are wet and drying. You can give them, see that moisture coming out? If you want to speed up the drying, you can go ahead and give them a rub on a paper towel, piece of cardboard. Get a lot of that extra moisture out. This brush, don't do this with a normal brush, but this one's already had a long, long life. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir that up. Usually you would use, you know, like a cheaper beat up brush or an older brush, like something like this, just really destroyed. But, you know, this brush is kind of becoming that brush for me because I've used it so much. So with this kind of thinned down orange wash, I'm going to see if I can't selectively pick out just some areas of interest around the skulls, like around jaw lines and teeth. Maybe where the head is kind of sitting in the dirt. Maybe under the brow. You can use your finger to kind of move it or erase, basically. And this is just going to add a little bit of color into this, just so it's not completely monotone. So it's kind of like how you could, you add a little rust effect to a metal piece to give it just that little boost of something interesting to look at. Hopefully there's a little bit of interest by adding this. Looks like we found a wet contrast spot down there. I'm going to bring it like along the bottom of this rib cage there. Yeah, just it's like something's wet there, or maybe it's just a different color dirt from the bone material. Let's run it along this spinal cord. Try to draw some attention to that. And put it in this area, sides of the head, around the skull's teeth. Basically, we're kind of framing with it. We're shading with it. We're blacklining with it. We're just all around selectively putting this kind of dark orange paint into some areas, trying to just get a little more interest, a little color variation. And it's going to dry, relatively subtle because we watered it down so much. So we can be a little aggressive with it. What's up, guys? I got a bunch of new viewers in there too, so feel free to jump in the chat if you got any questions. There we go, a little bit of that orange. Let's go ahead. Actually, we're going to go with, chestnut, scale 75, ink intensity, or ink tense chestnut. Just a little bit there. We'll see if we can't do something with that. Let's see if we can't maybe mix some of our orange in there, some water. Let's get some more water. I'm just going to pour this in there. There we go. So now we got basically the dark version of that. We're going to kind of do the same thing. Maybe focusing a little more towards the kind of dirt areas. And the deep areas where a lot of bones are, like in here, you can see a lot of the bones are piled in, stuffed together. So there's probably a lot of dirt, grime, shadow that's going to really collect in that area. And we're just boosting contrast, interest, value contrast. We're adding some color. So there's some color contrast. Just trying to bring a little more kind of life, or I know I keep using the word, but basically we're just adding interest. It's not so much about, is this exactly what a pile of bones looks like, as it is about, is this an interesting representation of a pile of bones? And I think for that, we're going to need a little bit of these kind of orange browns in our pile of bones here. Just give it some color. I mean, this would look great if you just sprayed it black and then sprayed it with a gray primer from above, like a zenithal prime. You could have a nice looking paint pot holder. Just doing that. No effort for all this, but this is fun, right? I mean, it's just if you're going to be having this on your desk while you paint, you know, maybe take a little time, make it look cool. If it's going to be sitting there for you. And there we go. We're just moving this wash around. So there we go. We got kind of these orange browns in the mix now. We can go back in too. I don't know if we need to, but you know, we can go back in with our makeup sponge and maybe just pat it, just tapping it basically. And you know, if that sponge touches any pool of paint, it will absorb. You can see some of it. It'll absorb it and speed up the drying time. Don't have to do this, but it's good for, you know, the stream. Just speed it up a little bit, hopefully. So there you go. You see some of the brown was picked up there. Cool. I don't know if we need these, so we'll just move them to the side. They're all kind of contaminated now. All right, now let's, I'm going to go with Iraqi Flesh. Just in this one, it's pretty dry, but I'm going to go over to this Ghost 2. It's got a lot of purple oil paint stuff in it, but it's still nice. And I haven't used it, so it's completely dry. See if we can't kind of, let's see if you can see this. So you can see this color here is the Iraqi Flesh. This was the bone, the rotten white mixed with bone. So it's a bit different in color. So we'll selectively bring this in. But not on every skull, not on every bone. Just adding it in to add a little bit more variation in basically our bone colors. Oh yeah, that's probably pretty subtle, but I can see it a little bit. All right, now let's go. Ooh, what do we got? How about we're going to do Iraqi Sand, Vallejo game color. Iraqi Sand. This is actually a little more yellow. It's a nice one. It's actually a nice color to base coat things with if you are about to paint them a really light color. You can use this Iraqi Sand because it has really good coverage over like a black or something and get it built up to a much lighter value very quick. And once again, not every bone pile, not every skull. I'm trying to add some variation into our bone pile. Rotten white. I think this rotten white will just look nice mixed with this Iraqi Sand. Give us a nice warm white color. I'm going to just kind of almost stab at a few of these areas. Really warm up some of the bones. Then we'll skip an area. So let's skip that. Then maybe we'll warm up this guy here, or brighten him up, I guess. Almost as if there's like a little hot spot of light maybe hitting maybe this area. And then it kind of gets dirty. And a little hot spot. Then we'll skip this skull, the big one there. We'll go to this little area. Maybe hit that spine a bit. So there we go. We're just alternating basically bone colors. And I mean, realistically, it's done. Right? You could just call it a day here. You could wait till it completely dries and put some oil wash on it or some Death Shroud clear wash. Obviously picking out the dirt more. I think that's what we'll be working on here in a second. I think darkening up the dirt is going to be a nice way to build even more contrast. And we'll jump in. So because these are all oranges and orange browns, kind of a burnt sienna, dark oranges, let's see if we can't get something a little interesting going. So we're going to take a new water bottle cap here. And I'm going to go with Blue Tone from Army Painter. You could go Drakenhof Nightshade. You could go, what are some other, any of the dark blue contrast paints, like a blue, intense blue ink from Scale 75. All good choices. And let's mix that with our Ultra Matte here. We'll just go ahead. It's almost 50-50 probably. Maybe a touch of water. Once again, stir it up. This is really bad for your paintbrush to stir up paint like this. But this brush has been used so many times, it's kind of become that sort of brush. Now I'm going to take one touch. Oh, I don't even need, I'll just take a touch of this. So orange and blue are complementary colors. So together they make kind of a muddy gray. And next to each other, they kind of vibrate. If you think of like the Denver Broncos uniform, or I think the Knicks in basketball. So what we're doing is adding a little bit of this kind of bluish shadow tone into our kind of dirt areas. It's kind of a dirty blue-gray. And then hopefully, if color theory serves us correctly, just by adding this kind of blue-gray into some of these shadowy, dirtier areas, trying to avoid the bones, but, you know, I'm not overly careful right now. By then, this blue being next to the kind of warm tones of the bones, it's going to make them just pop. It's going to make them look a little more vibrant, a little more interesting. We're just using color theory. My absolute favorite color theory, complementary colors, is blue and orange. Go on Google, look up like temperature paintings where people just use basically burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, oil paintings, temperature study paintings, and they can look really, really good with basically blue, an orange brown, and white. That's kind of what we're doing here. We're cooling down the dirt. We're cooling down the shadows. We're keeping the bones warm in the kind of orangish white tones. We're adding, there could be some dark shadows. Putting a blue shadow next to brown and orange. Think of brown as just dark orange. You can just really Create a lot of visual interest by them being next to each other or mixed nearby. You know, I think I'll hit the inside of our, maybe just like the rim. Give it that. See, like, hopefully you can see that, but just by putting that blue ring around it, feels, you know, it visually changes kind of what that feels like down there. And we'll kind of bring that up onto the walls. Remember, this inside's not really visible once our paint pot's being held in there like this is intended for. Any areas that maybe look a little warm, put some of this kind of blue wash in those areas nearby. Maybe where that bone, that warm bone is maybe touching up against the dirt or miscellaneous other bones. Maybe they're casting a cool shadow. Actually, I think it's going to look really nice. We're going to go ahead and put this in the eye sockets. And that'll really help them look darker, more striking. You got these warm skeleton skulls and then these cool, dark, shadowy eyes looking back at you. And yeah, like, you know, here's maybe a little too much bone of all the same color, so we can, or maybe here where that break in the skull and the bones popping out, maybe we could dab in some blue in there and get just some more interesting effects in that area of the model. Of course, you could do this on any model, and I recommend it. Always I think it's good to always be interested in normal painting techniques, even for miniature painters. So things like temperature, saturation, value, you know, those are things it's worth watching a few YouTube videos on, because they're things to think about while you're painting your models. Right? This could have just been browns and oranges and bone white colors, but now we got these blues in there, and once it's all dried up and mixing together in the light, you're just getting a lot more interesting bone looking effects. Now that's going to take quite a while to dry. Oh, you know what, I actually just noticed, I like where this guy's open mouth is. I'm going to fill in his mouth with this or cool blue tone. Maybe this guy too. So yeah, it's running off a little bit. I got quite a bit of paint on there now, because you can see we made that very thin, and you know, that's what happens. So now I think another thing we could do, just a little extra, I'm going to take Inktense Black. This is black ink. You could think of black as a very, very dark blue. A lot of times in painting, black will have blue in it. Maybe about 50-50 with the ultra matte medium. So what we got here is black ink. Hopefully we got enough of this blue here to make something. So there we go. We got Let's use this kind of black blue. You know, I'm gonna water that down even more, just to be safe. And let's use this to just really define some dark spots. I think under here is a dark spot. We're bringing in where we think maybe the darkest areas, the least amount of light has collected. And this is just further separating our contrast here from our lights and darks. And you can kind of see as we piled on washes and stuff, you can kind of see naturally where a lot of your wash maybe accumulated, and that definitely could be a dark spot, because if all the paint is accumulating there, it's the most kind of recessed area. So it's likely that that would also be probably somewhat of a shadow area. Also, I'm not afraid to get extra of this kind of black blue into the kind of dirt areas. And just anywhere I feel like maybe it's not overly popping or interesting. But after this dries, I'll go back and I'll hit it with a dry brush, but it's probably going to take like half an hour to fully dry. So we won't have to sit and watch all that. We're going to call it here in a second. But you'll see photos of this exact painted model on my Instagram and on the upcoming Kickstarter. So make sure you're following me over there on Kickstarter, Sleepwalk Air. We'll hit this with another dry brush to pull out some more of these kind of bone highlights, just a little more controlled, make these skulls pop, make some of these big femur bones, these ribs, this spinal cord pop, and then we'll leave maybe some of these miscellaneous little bits of bone kind of to just blend into the dirtier areas, right? They're lower in the pile. They're more packed into the dirt. They got more grime on them. So they don't need the highlights, the same highlights. And I think that's it. There we have it. You can kind of rotate it around here, try to find, you know, did you put enough shadow in these areas? Do you see any spots that really just are not interesting enough and could use some dark value? Cool. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to let that dry, and then basically all I'm going to do is go with this rotten white, maybe this Jackbone, you know, Reichland Flash, maybe this silver gray, any of these sort of, you know, ivory, any of these sort of off-white colors, and just selectively pick out a few skulls, a few bones, make a few spots pop, what I think would be like the focal points. I think this skull here, biting on this bone, it's a good one. The skull and the rib cage is a nice one to bring a nice highlight. These skulls here, basically you can just highlight the skulls and then pick out a few bones, the rib cage, the spine. And you can have a great looking, basically display for your paint holder. I mean, already you got a pile of bones there. It looks pretty cool. And if you have your paint in there, and you can't even knock it over. I mean, you could if you really, really tried, but it's unlikely that you're going to knock it over from just accidentally bumping it. So, cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Just tried to make it interesting, give you some ideas on how you're going to bring some life to your pile of bones. If you want to go with some more traditional kind of bone colors, of course, this will look great in you know, reds, like red skulls, or like gore and blood effects, jungle, swamp, and mud, all kinds of cool stuff. You know, there's infinite ways you could paint bones, black and ash colors, like they've been charred, like this is a fire pit. You can make this like a fire pit with the hot oranges and yellows in the center, and then you put your little pot of paint in like the middle of the fire pit. That could be cool too. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. The new campaign will be live shortly on Kickstarter. It's coming soon. I just need to wait for a review from them, and then I'll have the exact date on when I can launch. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and I'll talk to you soon.